intervention that created all this displacement in the first place.
Right.
No, that's a great point.
Super fair point, and I bring that up all the time. You get these people who rail against immigrants coming into this country, and I say, well, you got to think about the root causes here. I mean, the war on drugs, U.S. foreign policy, the fact that we're bombing people in the Middle East every day, and other military interventions all over the world, creating war that people want to get away from. Who wants to live in a war zone?
Yeah, and I know that's the history for a lot of the Central Americans in this area. Also, the U.S. with their sort of like creating the the toppling sort of like governments in Central America that forces a lot of people to to flee.
Right.
And they end up here, and
Yeah, I think we've actually got a caller. We've got, let's just see, reading these computer screens. Joe from Providence. Joe, you're joining the coalition live on AM 630, AM 99.7 FM. Joe, what say you?
How are you?
Good.
Joe.
Yeah, listen, I'm a retired immigration agent. I retired back in 19...
Oh, wait a minute, is this Joe, the INS agent?
Yeah.
Joe, how are you?
Okay, I'm listening to this, and I'm going to try to be nice about it, because I'm listening to what I think is some real ignorant talk in some regard. First of all, racial profiling is not a good tactic, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's not effective. First of all, we were required to speak Spanish, okay? If we didn't learn Spanish, we didn't keep the job. And Spanish isn't different dialects. There's different usages. It's like English. If you're from South Carolina or you're from New England, you may use different words, but it's the same language, okay? Every Spanish person can speak to every other Spanish person to a greater or lesser extent. Now, I know my wife's Puerto Rican, so she gave me a lot of test words to use on people who are claiming to be Puerto Rican, because everybody wants to be a Puerto Rican when they talk to the immigration service, because they're U.S. citizens, okay? It's a very common scam. But what we would look for, when I worked the Common Carrier Squad, and this is before your guests were ever born, this is back in the 70s, we'd be at O'Hare Airport at 5 or 6 in the morning, and we'd get the West Coast flights. Then we knew those West Coast flights had been loaded up by smugglers with smuggled aliens. And we see 60 or 70 people get off the flight, and a good percentage of them are Latino. You think we stopped everybody? No. We had a way to look at people and know who we needed to talk to and who we didn't need to talk to.
Yeah, but let me jump in for a second.
Like a guy has 2 pairs of pants on, I'm talking to that guy.
No, absolutely. But let me jump in here, Joe, for a second. I mean, in this case, the two folks I've got here in the studio with me are members of families who are here in this country legally, who are pursuing ordinary everyday lives, whether it be school or jobs or civil action or being involved in community groups. And yet, you talk about, and in this case, we're not even talking about really ICE, INS, whichever iteration you want. We're talking about the urban reality of having police officers having sort of free reign to profile, to record into a gang database, so I think what these folks are asking for is the same kind of treatment I get in the burbs, which is...
Well, maybe they could get the same thing I got when I was growing up, because I'm white, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm 69. I grew up in what you would call a scumhole neighborhood, a high crime area, very high crime inner city area. And there's some black people living there, but most of the hoodlums there were white. And the cops were predominantly white, some black, occasional Hispanic. And guess what? You know how many times I got stopped just standing there?
Yeah, but again, I mean, the sins of the past...
They kept us in line, so to speak, and they knew who the gangbangers were. I wasn't. I got stopped anyway.
Well, but I mean, again, we're talking to folks who personally have been stopped on the street because of alleged gang connections, and yet there's no prior behavior, there's no current behavior to indicate that they would be involved in anything other than going about their business. So we've moved, unfortunately. Whether it could be as a result of the drug war, the quote-unquote failed war on drugs, it could be because of urban policing, or more often than not.
Let me tell you.
No, I understand.
Not to bang your head on the wall, but look, we deported hundreds and hundreds of people who were here legally, okay, because they committed felonies. And you know what? One of the biggest groups of people people we deported from here was Portuguese.
Okay, but
They didn't come here when they were 2 years old. They had no idea what the Azores were like until we sent them there.
all right.
But Joe, I mean, you have to admit the reality of what, not only what's happening on the streets, but the reality of the demographic has certainly shifted since you were an INS agent.
Right. So the point here is, and Joe, thanks for joining the show. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your continued support because your track record of public service to this country and to this community is really unparalleled. But I think the bigger point for this, folks in coalition land, if you will, is that we have moved beyond interventions with troubled youth or people who have clearly portrayed past criminal inclinations into stopping and frisking and searching and identifying and really pigeonholing and whatever cliche you want to use in the name of quote-unquote public service. We are anticipating crimes that do not exist, all based on where someone has to live, their ethnic background, their sexual identity, any one of a number of 100 reasons, their personal fashion statement, if you will, for lack of a better term. And we've moved into this where, you've got people who are completely out of, control in the sense of, what they're doing with that information. And they're just taking these people who don't have the resources that folks in the burbs do. It's just simply not right. We've only got 7 or 8 minutes left. Dave, why don't let's.
So yeah, let's touch on a couple more points here. One of the other things that popped up in this act for me was the standardize and counter form, which I just thought was a great idea. So this would have a police fill out a little card with the race, gender, age of the person that stopped, the reason for the stop, if there was a search or not, the results of the search, length of stop. I mean, this is really, really standard stuff that should be being logged by officers on a regular basis. But again, if you all are putting forth an ordinance to say, let's do this, it's clearly not happening at this point.
Yeah. This is something we came up with as, right? So we want to prevent profiling. We want to and we also want to be able to keep the police accountable for misconduct, right? And so how do you actually do that, right? And so this form was one of the things we came up with. So it just, provides a written record of what happened. And, if, in this way, so if that written record, right, you can see that written record. You don't have to you don't go off of, whatever, this person said this or whatever. And, in those cases, usually actually, the police words, win. And also, this way with a written record, if there is misconduct found, there's a way to actually, if there is no written record, then that's, that's
there's no accountability.
There's no accountability.
And
exactly.
And I think of it as if the police are going to keep a gang database, why do we not have the same for our officers? Why do we not have an officer database to know who he stopped, when he stopped them, how long they stopped, what that person looked like? Was there a reason to stop them? It's like, hey, if what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you're gonna keep a database on your end of people that you think are up to no good, why shouldn't we have the same database to then be able to go through it and show us which police officers are up to no good?
Yeah, exactly.
What do you see as the potential? I mean, and now we're going to get into a bit of political handicapping here, and I'm not sure how comfortable you are as folks taking really this political tack with the city council at large. In your conversations, and we're not going to ask you to name names, but in your conversations, whether it be community leaders outside of the DARE organization, whether it be community organizers or members who are elected to the council, do you feel like you're getting a good reception of this? Because it's very well written, it's very well thought out.
I think we've had a very good reception from community members. And for counselors, some of them, so the sponsors ones, the ones sponsoring it are definitely, they agree with it. And then some other ones, they like the bill, but they're worried about the actual sort of legal implementation. Mm-hmm. And then finally, some want someone wants to talk to the police first.
Do you, we supposedly in Providence engage in community policing, where allegedly, and I say this allegedly only because I don't live in Providence. My children go to school in Providence. I don't live in Providence. Do you feel that there's a real element of community policing at work? Do you know the policemen who are happen to be, quote unquote, on the beat in your neighborhood? Do you get that feeling that there's a partnership that exists between you and police officers where you live?
I don't know the police officers, but I know what the Jump Out Boys cars looks like.
So, and I think that's the larger point that Pat's trying to make here. In this day and age where many communities, I just read a great article about Fresno, California, that's moving into this community policing model where it's about creating positive relationships and not adversarial relationships. And it seems to me like the youth on the west side and the south side of Providence are learning very young that the police not only do not have their backs, but that they're kind of the enemy. Like they're kind of out to get you. And I shudder to think what that's like. I really do.
What's your reaction?
Yeah, definitely. It's because they grow up seeing the physical and mentally and emotionally, like, how the police treat, like, others. Like, they see how racial profiling goes on. Like, I definitely grown up in a neighborhood where I've seen people, like, the police racially profiling others and just tormenting, and it's something that you grow up to know, like, they're not good. If there's something wrong, you don't know who to call, because if you call 911, they could probably do something else than actually help you. And, like, it's a very difficult situation for, like, people my age, at least.
Do you feel exposed legally? I mean, do you feel like you're at risk?
Right now, yeah, I actually do, because I am a youth organizer at PRISM, and I have been around many cops, and I feel like every time I see a cop now, they actually, like, recognize my face. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I try not to, like, bother with them or anything, but it's kind of scary.
Well, and I think that that's the real shame here, is that here's a young person who's trying to get involved in her community and make it a better place for everybody. And you're now not only being profiled because you're Asian, but because you're becoming this community organizer. And I think that's a shame, because if we had more young people getting involved, our communities probably wouldn't look the way they do.
In the minute or two we have left, tell us if there are youth that want to get involved in your organization, where can they find you? Where do you operate under the umbrella of DARE, or are you an independent organization?
We are an independent nonprofit organization, but under the CSA we are a coalition. So it is the organizations DARE, PRISM, and ONA. You can contact us there. We also
and AFSC.
Oh yeah. And I think we also made a Facebook for the Community Safety Act, so you can check up on events and things we're doing around the Community Safety Act. And yeah. We
will be posting links to them on our webpage. See, we ran through an hour. You guys were worried about having an hour to fill up. I have a feeling we could talk another hour. You've been listening to the Coalition Talk Radio on AM 630, 99.7 FM. We will post links to their organization, as well as links about the Community Safety Act and its progress, or hopefully its extreme progress, not its lack of progress, through the Providence City Council and its implementation. We're going to have you back on the show soon. We want you to report in. Let us know how things are coming. And stick to it. That's all I can say. Stick to it. It's great to see this kind of level of commitment from folks in the community. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Folks, again, we're going to be at the Cannabis Convention next weekend. We're going to be here live again next Saturday night at 6 o'clock with a very special guest. We're going to do a little announcement later in the week. You've been listening to The Coalition on Talk Radio, Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, CoalitionRadio_.us, and, of course, on the mighty, mighty Twitter.
Time for the latest news, traffic, and weather from the WPRO Seascape News Center, WEAN FM Wakefield Peacedale, WPRO Providence, a Cumulus station.